A seemingly innocent photo. A little girl poses with Hitler, smiling beneath the Alpine sun. Yet 80 years later, when experts zoom in, they turn pale when they see the secret hidden in plain sight. What shocking truth was subtly encoded right under Hitler's nose? Luke Weiss leaned over the illuminated screen, eyes narrowed, his breathing unconsciously shallow. After days pouring through countless historical negatives, fatigue had begun to blur one frame into the next, until this one came sharply into focus. It was deceptively innocent at first glance. A little girl posing for a photo with Hitler, their figures captured against the picturesque backdrop of the Berghof, bathed in alpine sunlight. The Führer, recognizable by his distinct profile and carefully crafted expression, was leaning forward, gently clasping the small hands of the blonde-haired girl in a polka-dot dress. She smiled back trustingly, joy radiating from a moment frozen by the camera's shutter 80 years before. But there was something unsettling, something Luke couldn't immediately place, that tugged at the edges of his perception. Adjusting the digital loop, Luke zoomed in on the girl's hair ribbon, his face turning pale, his breath caught sharply. Tiny raised patterns adorned the white edelweiss-shaped decoration, dots and dashes far too deliberate and orderly to be accidental embroidery. The pattern was meticulous, purposeful. His heart quickened. Instinct whispered a single, thrilling word. Code. Luke stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. "Mila!" His voice cracked slightly in excitement, echoing across the empty archive room. "You have to see this." Dr. Amelia Crane swiveled her chair from a workstation filled with meticulously catalogued printouts. Her eyes brightened with curiosity as she pushed toward him. "What did you find?" she asked, leaning over his shoulder. "Look closely." Luke carefully enlarged the image again, his hands slightly trembling. "It's not decorative stitching. It's deliberate." Mila's eyes narrowed in concentration, scanning the image intently. Her expression shifted from intrigue to alarmed as realization dawned. "That's Morse code," she murmured, her voice low and filled with astonishment. "Someone embedded a secret message on this girl's ribbon, right under Hitler's nose." Their eyes met, turning pale at what they had just seen, recognizing the profound implications of this discovery. Luke's mind raced. Who could have been brave enough or desperate enough to hide a clandestine message in plain sight, inches from the most dangerous man in Europe? With deliberate precision, Luke logged the negative for an immediate ultra-high-resolution rescan. As he watched the scanner's laser carefully pass over the fragile negative, he felt the weight of history pressing in around him. A mere child smiling innocently next to Hitler, an image crafted for propaganda purposes, had suddenly transformed into a hidden testament of silent defiance, a whispered rebellion encoded in delicate white petals. Luke swallowed hard, understanding that they stood at the precipice of an explosive revelation. The echo of this small, daring act from the distant past was only now about to resonate, 80 years later, ready to confront the present in ways neither of them could yet imagine. By the time dawn broke softly over Munich, the Bavarian State Archive hummed with a measured electric urgency. Mila hurried between aisles of storage boxes, each precisely labeled and ordered. Her fingers brushed swiftly along the dusty spines of faded folders until she arrived at one labeled in a spidery hand. Donations. Dietary Studio 1957. She placed the aged dossier gently onto the viewing table and slid it open, revealing notes written by an earlier archivist. Luke's eyes scanned rapidly, alighting finally on the name Dietrich, underscored in faded ink. "Dietrich," Luke whispered almost to himself. "The photographer at Berghof. Commissioned by Hitler's propaganda office." "Precisely," Mila said softly, adjusting her glasses. "An unremarkable man by historical standards. Party-aligned, low-ranking, but tasked frequently with publicity shots of Hitler at leisure. His studio was destroyed in '44 along with most of his negatives during an air raid." Yet somehow, she tapped the dossier gently. This particular negative survived. It was donated by his widow. Luke stared at the large screen again, now vividly showing the little girl's ribbon ornament, its dots and dashes magnified into strange clarity. Why hide a message here? Luke wondered aloud, frustration coloring his tone. If Dietrich wanted to communicate something subversive, why choose this girl at such personal risk? Perhaps because no one would ever suspect such innocence. Mila offered. Thoughtfully, her gaze drifted back to the picture, to the child's smile frozen forever in the glass negative. Luke pulled out his notebook, rapidly transcribing the Edelweiss petal shapes onto graph paper. After an hour's careful concentration, he had converted each flower petal to Morse code, ending up with a puzzling sequence. The short sequence seemed nonsensical. Luke's lips pressed together into a thin line. We need more clues. Dietrich must have left something behind. A note, a diary entry, some explanation. Mila returned to the dossier, leafing through sheets of donated materials until she found a yellowed scrap of paper that had escaped earlier notice. On it, a hurried scribble in pencil read, See Jacob Dietrich for additional materials if needed. Jakob Dietrich, Mila read aloud. She glanced at Luke, a spark igniting between them. Quickly, Mila typed the name into their registry. Moments later, they were dialing the number of Otto Dietrich's grandson, a retired engineer living quietly in Salzburg. By early afternoon, Jacob Dietrich arrived in Munich, looking nervous yet curious, carrying an old tin box clutched tightly to his chest. My grandfather always seemed troubled by his work, Jacob began slowly. He rarely spoke of his assignments for the party, but after the war, he mentioned once that he tried to do something. Something small, he said. Something important. Jacob gingerly opened the box, revealing contact sheets and a worn notebook with scorched edges. Luke's heart quickened. The notebook, a photographic diary, held entries meticulously documenting various propaganda shoots. His eyes swiftly landed on an entry dated June 22, 1936. Commission reached me from Reich Chancellery. Order to photograph child visitor. Blonde model. Aryan youth. Name withheld. Mother seems nervous. Luke gently flipped to the final page of Dietrich's notes, finding another cryptic entry. Ribbon delivered. Hope the code sings in silence. The entry was dated 2 weeks after the photo session. Mila's expression sharpened with understanding. Dietrich knew his work was dangerous. He anticipated scrutiny, raids perhaps. So he entrusted this subtle rebellion to something seemingly innocent, a child's ribbon. No Nazi censor would suspect a little girl. Yeah, they are nice. The magnitude of Dietrich's courage silenced them for a long moment. He had embedded a protest, tiny yet powerful, into an image that otherwise glorified a regime he secretly loathed. They were dealing with an intentional act of defiance hidden in plain sight for 80 years. Jakob's eyes filled with tears. I never knew my grandfather was capable of this. He was always so careful, fearful even. But this, he must have felt compelled. Luke squeezed Jakob's shoulder gently. We'll find out exactly what he intended to say. This little girl, whoever she was, deserves the truth. As Jakob departed for home, Luke glanced back at the enlarged image of the girl on the screen. Her eyes sparkled innocently, as if holding secrets she herself couldn't possibly understand. Was she? And why had Dietrich risked so much to encode a hidden message in her ribbon? Luke and Mela exchanged a determined look. They would uncover Dietrich's message, no matter where it led. The next day, Luke found himself pacing the polished corridor outside the cryptanalysis lab at the University of Munich. At his side stood Mela, and behind the glass door, the distinguished Dr. Karl Schneider was meticulously preparing to analyze the strange Edelweiss pattern. Schneider, a retired cryptoanalyst known for decoding Cold War messages buried in innocuous-looking images, glanced up briefly, signaling readiness. They entered the lab, feeling an odd hush, as though history itself were holding its breath. "Intriguing puzzle," Schneider remarked, tapping the blown-up Edelweiss pattern on a large monitor. "Deceptively subtle. Whoever designed this was no amateur." Luke watched as Schneider began cross-referencing the dots and dashes against his Morse code charts. Yet, even after meticulous scrutiny, the code stubbornly resisted straightforward decoding. Schneider frowned slightly. Only 4 letters clearly emerge: NIAU, possibly a fragment of something larger, or perhaps reversed or scrambled. Mila exchanged a cautious glance with Luke. 4 letters isn't much. Could it be initials? A partial surname, perhaps? Possibly. Schneider nodded thoughtfully. But we need context, historical clues, or genealogical data. Any leads on who this girl was? Luke sighed softly. Nothing yet. The Chancellor guest records from June 1936 list hundreds of visitors, including numerous children. It feels impossible to pinpoint her without something concrete, but Mila, sensing the weight of the moment, quietly raised her hand. Maybe not entirely impossible. Jakob Dietrich provided something else last night. A telegram. Short. Cryptic. IMG play safe stop keep negative close stop bloodline matters. Bloodline matters, Schneider repeated softly, eyebrows arching. Interesting choice of words. Luke's heart quickened. Could the girl have had a problematic lineage? Something hidden deliberately, perhaps? Dietrich was trying to subtly reveal a dangerous secret, concealed from even the highest Nazi officials. Mila adjusted her glasses thoughtfully. We might have to approach this genealogically. If the code relates to a surname, NIO, it might actually be part of a longer name. They returned swiftly to the archives, driven by a shared urgency. Luke cross-checked. Surnames from Munich's interwar records, zeroing in on variations. Nano quickly appeared among families with documented Jewish heritage, standing out sharply in a register overshadowed by persecution and tragedy. At first glance, the surname was notable historically. Bernila Nano, Luke recalled aloud, Hitler's favorite child visitor. But the dates don't match. She was older by 1936. Mila tapped her pen nervously. Perhaps a relative, a sister, a cousin, hidden from records. They requested emergency access to Berlin's birth registry, confronting strict privacy laws. But Mila's academic credentials and the gravity of their investigation opened doors normally shut tight. 2 tense days passed awaiting Berlin's response. Luke and Mila filled the hours poring over Dietrich's diary, straining for missed clues. Each line hinted deeper into the photographer's internal struggle, his veiled loathing for his assignments, the quiet desperation behind every posed portrait of false happiness. Finally, late on a rainy evening, the records arrived electronically. The yellowed scanned pages flickered on the archive screen, showing births around 1930. Mila's finger traced names carefully, until she stopped abruptly. Elsa Nino. Born Munich, May 16, 1930. Mother, Clara Nino, née Rosenwag. Father, Hans Nino Rosenwag. Luke felt chills along his spine. Jewish heritage. Mila nodded, expression tight, and face turning pale. Exactly what Hitler's regime would try desperately to conceal. The silence thickened. The revelation changed everything. Hitler's favorite child visitor was of Jewish descent. Otto Dietrich had encoded her Jewish surname into the image itself, a stunning act of defiance, placing an innocent girl of hidden Jewish descent directly into the heart of Nazi propaganda. But why risk it all? And how had Elsa Nito's identity remained secret for so long? To find answers, Luke and Mila urgently reconnected with Jakob, who searched his grandfather's personal items again. Late that evening, Jakob returned, visibly shaken. He carried a delicate pressed Edelweiss flower, nearly transparent from age, wrapped in a fragile linen square. Handing it to Luke, Jakob whispered, "He kept this hidden beneath his floorboards. Look closely." Carefully unfolding the linen, Luke's breath caught. Embroidered in tiny dots and dashes, matching the ribbon's original Morse design, were 4 simple letters, LEB.live. Luke translated softly, voice thick with emotion. Dietrich's message wasn't merely revelation, it was hope. They now understood the true courage behind Dietrich's actions. He risked execution not only to expose hypocrisy, but to pass a quiet yet powerful plea to future generations. Mila held the embroidered linen carefully, hands trembling slightly. "We must authenticate this conclusively, historically, scientifically." Schneider eagerly embraced the new evidence, applying forensic multispectral imaging to the linen. Hours later, results unequivocally matched the original ribbon pattern. It was undeniable proof of a deliberate and coded protest by Dietrich. Luke stared at the screen, where the enhanced imagery vividly showed the Edelweiss petals revealing their full Morse sequence.